Mardag, sometimes called the Death Elemental. The Mardag is a greater demon serving the chaos god Khorne. When the Mardag is summoned, it does one thing, and one thing only. It kills. The killing spree of the Mardag can only be ended by banishing it to its home plane, either by killing its physical form or by magical means. In his travels across the southern wastes of chaos, Archaon witnessed the black towers of the fortress of the demon Mardag, the shadows of which drained years from the lives of beast fiends falling beneath them, turning them into withered husks, browned bones, and dust in the wind. This fortress was one of the few places even the future ever chosen did not dare to assault. The Mardag appears as a huge robed and hooded skeleton over 10 feet tall. It is typically armored in chainmail and carries an immense skiff made of his own blood. With its gloomy appearance, the Mardag terrifies all living things. His body is thin and gaunt for such an imposing height, and he has a horrible face with the features of a skull. It is capable of throwing tremendous punches, capable of pulverizing people and things. His own crimson skin is covered with the faces of the people he reaps with the skiff he evokes from the blood that coats him. Each victim increases his power, and the same ichor that his body exudes drives those who come into contact crazy, forcing them to acts of extreme violence. The Mardag is especially feared in Remas, where it appeared twice, taking hundreds of lives. The last time he was spotted was in the last years of the 26th century in Remas, summoned by the jester Corvino in an elaborate vendetta hatched against Umberto Gambini, one of the triumviri of Remas. The unfortunate priest of Morscurio had a key role in Corvino's revenge. In fact, the man was used as a means to guide the Mardag in the material plane. Through a ritual, he was forced to break the vase in which it had been imprisoned for 1,000 years by the Viadag, a greater demon of law, transmuting his own body into the cocoon from which the greater demon would later emerge. Then, Corvino escaped with one of the fingers of the newborn Mardag. The demon chased him, killing everything he found on his way, including the zealot inquisitor Gualtiero Boca, who in his madness challenged it in single combat, only to be horribly slain. After the Mardag reached the Great Reman Bridge district, where nor the guards nor the gates could stop his march. Finally, once he reached the Gambini's villa, he managed to retrieve his lost part from the corpse of the thief and vanished without leaving a trace. After the destruction it wreaked on the city-state, the confidence that the citizens of Remas placed in the cult of their main god Sol Khan has greatly diminished. Next, one of Khorne's greatest demons, known as the Exiled One and the Wrathful Reaper. See you soon. Vectique couldn't come, so I came instead. You have called, and I have answered. You sought the harbinger of doom. I am he, little sorcerer. I am your doom. I am Skarbrand. I am your death. From Skarbrand, summoned forth by the foolishness of Grey Seer Thankwall. Skarbrand, known also as the Exiled One, the Wrathful Reaper, or the Drinker of Blood, was once the greatest of all Khorne's demons. An eternity of battle in the Blood God's name had brought Skarbrand victories uncounted. It was he who tore down the gates of Sarnesha's first palace and visited ruin therein. It was he who led the 8th hosts of murder to their triumph over the combined armies of the other Chaos Gods. In all the endless years of Khorne's existence, no other had piled so many skulls before the Skull Throne, or spilled the blood of so many warriors and innocents alike. Thus did Skarbrand enjoy Khorne's favor like no other, an honor which would eventually lead to his downfall from grace. Ever since his exile, in all of history, there have been none to serve the Lord of Skulls as completely as Skarbrand. He has taken mountains and mountains of skulls for the Blood God, and filled vast oceans with gore. He has shaken the foundations of eternity with his wrath, and left a trail of slaughter across existence. Yet still, Khorne refuses to rescind his hated decree. There is little regret in the Blood God's black heart, and he spares none for Skarbrand, who in tortured exile serves the Lord of Skulls more completely than ever. I will rip the bones from your body and leave your skin to rot. But your skull I will give to the Skull God, and it will be one among the multitude. From Skarbrand, the Exiled One. Alas, no being could enjoy such triumphs forever, and so proud was Skarbrand that it was a simple task for Tzeentch to fan the embers of his hubris. One dark day, when Khorne's back was turned and his attention elsewhere, Skarbrand's fierce pride grew hot, and, blinded by rage, he smote the Blood God a mighty blow. Powerful beyond measure was he, and he had toppled cities with but one blow apiece. But even he could not pierce Khorne's brazen armor. Only the smallest of chinks was cut into the Blood God's armor, but even this was sufficient to draw the terrible fury of Khorne's gaze. Incandescent with wrath, Khorne seized the demon by the throat. The Blood God cursed Skarbrand's name and choked all personality from him, leaving only the bottomless rage that had caused him to attack. Climbing the uppermost tower of the Brass Citadel, Khorne cast forth his arm and hurled the demon deep into the realm of chaos, banishing the bloodthirster from his presence. For 8 days and nights, Skarbrand plummeted, a fiery comet of ill omen streaking across the unchanging sky. The impact of the Bloodthirster's landing gouged a canyon in the landscape and left his wings tattered and torn. Since that fateful day, Skarbrand has wandered the mortal and immortal realms, drowning his sins in the blood of the slain, though he no longer has the wit to fully understand why. Frozen in the moment of that rage-spurred betrayal, he has become Wrath Incarnate, a restless fury that cannot be stopped. Wherever he treads, order and discipline are replaced with anarchy as those in his path drown in feelings of empty loathing and unrestrained savagery. Even the most rational of beings cannot resist the corruption of Skarbrand's madness. Fast friends and firm allies tear at one another with wild abandon. Craven and brave beings alike claw at their foes without regard for their own lives. Through this anarchy, he runs rampant, twin axes hacking and cleaving until there is no one left to kill. His tortured roars echo around the battlefield, waves of pure rage infused with enough force to shatter buildings and pulverize flesh. From then on, he became nothing more than a vessel filled with unreasoning hatred and rage, empty of any thoughts or personality of what was once Khorne's greatest chosen. The Battle of Karak-Ungkul. No, you shall not escape me so easily. You will burn, Mage Rat, and then you will scream and scream and scream. From Skarbrand during the Battle of Karak-Ungkul. Whether the being known as Skarbrand was still within the good grace of Khorne when he descended upon the mortal plane to ravage the dwarf hold of Karak-Ungkul is unclear. What was certain was that by the foolish efforts of Grey Seer Thankful, who in his attempt to summon forth the infamous Vermin Lord Vectique into the mortal plane, had mistakenly summoned forth the legendary Bloodthirster instead. What the foolish Grey Seer failed to realize was that the magical artifact known as the Hand of Vectique, which he tried to use in his summon ritual, contained a hidden mark of Khorne upon its palm. A mark carved by its previous owner, Grey Seer Thratsnik, as an act of vengeance against the Under-Empire that had abandoned him to his fate of lonely isolation and eventual starvation many decades ago. Freed upon the mortal plane, Skarbrand wrought a terrible carnage amongst the battlefield, where dwarves and Skaven alike fought each other and their allies in gruesome displays of mad rage and uncontrollable bloodshed due to the unnatural demonic presence of the Bloodthirster. It was only thanks to the efforts of Master Engineer Clarak Bronzehammer, who set off a demolition charge which saw a massive axe of Valaya fall down and sink its blade into the flesh of the Bloodthirster's head, did the dwarf hold survive the demonic onslaught. Thankful, having had enough of risking his life for the ambitions of others, fled the battlefield right after he blasted the Master Engineer with a wave of warp lightning and saw his body fall from the statue of Valaya and upon the rocky, hard floor many stories below. Before Skarbrand was sent back into the realm of chaos, he whispered to Thankwall that should he have need of him again, he would be waiting. Next, the dread Demon Princess of Khorne, known also as the Gore Queen and, of course, the Bloody. See you soon. I am the harbinger of your demise. I am the nightmare in all mortals. I am the thing you fear the most. I am death. From Falkia. Falkia the Bloody, known also as the Gore Queen, the Valkyrie, the Bringer of Glory, and the Sword Maiden of the Blood God, is a dread demon princess of Khorne. She is charged by her god to bear the worthy warriors of Norsca and beyond who die honorable deaths in battle to fight on in Khorne's hall for all eternity. Once a fell warrior queen of the Norscan clan known as the Schwarzwolf, Falkia rose in the blood god's esteem by leading her warriors to vanquish tribes dedicated to the other chaos gods, and by slaying any who questioned her right to rule. When a demon prince of Slaanesh came into her hall, intrigued by her feral beauty, and commanded her to leave her rulership and join him as a slave girl, the warrior queen took up her great spear, Slopnir, and in a berserk rage slew the demon and swore that she would lay its head at the base of Khorne's throne in the realm of chaos. Though she died on the journey, Khorne was impressed with her devotion. From death, he elevated her to demonhood. Charged with descending onto the battlefield to choose those worthy warriors of Norsca who will fight on in the halls of the Blood God for all eternity after their deaths, Falkia has served her dark master well for uncounted centuries. She descended upon the field of glory, her armor drenched in blood and rays of light shining from her spear. The warriors of Norsca who praise mighty Khorne, which is to say, many of them, redouble their efforts in her presence, knowing that the Blood Father despises cowards and will strike down those who flee or show weakness. And also, that to gain the prize of fighting on in his hall for all time and becoming his chosen is a prize beyond all measure. They say that when the Axe Father is pleased with our efforts, the tides of the sky will flow and ebb with darkest red, leech from the blood of our enemies. On the day that happens, Lilven, our people will rise far above all others. From Merok, the chieftain of the Schwarzwolf tribe and father of Falkia. In her original existence, Falkia was born as a child to a dead mother and a chieftain of a nomadic barbarian tribe called the Schwarzwolf, which means Black Wolves. Known by her father as Lil Ven, which in their tongue means little friend, Falkia always had dreams of venturing to the far north and claiming the rewards gifted to the greatest champion of the gods. But her tribe was at war with another, and by the tender age of 10, she fought her first battle as a shield maiden and won. Many years after this great battle, the fortune of the Schwarzwolf grew once more. Despite being at the ripe age of 18, Falkia had taken neither a husband or even a lover. As such, her father took Kata, a friend of Falkia, as a wife, and she bore him 3 children, including a son. Yet the old chieftain of the Schwarzwolf grew sick by an illness, and the tribe once more was struck with misfortune. A recently decimated tribe of Norscan farmers asked Chieftain Merok for shelter, and reluctantly agreed to protect and aid their people. This garnered him the ire of his people, seeing his actions as weak and pathetic, particularly by his own daughter. In a climactic moment, Falkia took advantage of the worsening situation and ruthlessly killed her own father, as well as Radek, her first and perhaps only true mortal lover, and took possession of the tribe from her weakling father. The moment she took up the act of killing her own father, the daughter King Merok knew as a child was no more. She soon became a ruthless killing machine, bent on nothing but glory and bloodshed. She slew all those that opposed her, culling the weaker members of her tribe, and even going as far as to kill her own stepmother, killing her own stepsisters, and sparing only her infant half-brother. Soon, she even managed to gain the respect of the Bloody Hands, a fierce war band of marauders which came to seek out the Norscan farmers Falkia's father had sheltered. The Rise of the Gore Queen. People of the Schwarzwolf, we have been betrayed. Our chieftain, our beloved Merok, lies dead because of the treachery of a man he trusted, a man he loved as a brother, and who we all trusted as our war speaker, Radek the Betrayer. See him there. He lies dead by my hand. Retribution was served instantly, but not before he gave me the truth. My father was going to do what was right. He planned to cull the weak from the strong, separate the brave from the cowardly, and keep those who could wield their weapons with skill. But Reich and his men conspired with Radek. They promised him the position of chieftain if he gave his aid to assassinate my father. It is no secret that Radek hungered for my father's position. He agreed to this gutless plot. Such treachery could not go unpunished. As such, the people of the hills will be taken into the Schwarzwolf, conditional upon their complete, unswerving loyalty. Any of those who do not wish to accept that condition, then consider the alternative. The alternative is your own deaths. If you wish to join your menfolk as food for the animals of the woods, then my warriors will gladly aid you in meeting that desire. From Falkia the Bloody, lying to her own people. With the Alliance forged, the bounty of the spring and summer combined with the careful rationing that was imposed on the growing tribe proved to be exceptionally effective, and as such, losses of life over the hardest weeks of the dark winter were minimal. There were still a number of casualties, however. the elderly, the infirm, and infants who were too weak to survive the earliest days of life. For Falkia, the long months of winter were a trial unlike anything she had ever anticipated, juggling the demands of her people with the frequent incursions from small tribes who thought they could somehow take on the might of the Schwarzwolf was tiring. She had never realized just what leading her people would mean. Politics. Not all the dealings with small tribes were making short work of the more aggressive ones, and the Schwarzwolf did that with increasingly brutal style. The number of heads placed on poles around the perimeter of the camp grew almost daily. Falkia encouraged competition between her warriors, offering a prize to those who could take the most skulls in a battle. It kept them keen and eager. Under her leadership, the Schwarzwolf were gaining a reputation as a bloodthirsty, relentless band of warriors. For some, that acted as a deterrent, and for others, it served as a challenge. For a handful, it opened up interesting trade possibilities. The might of the Schwarzwolf had grown exponentially in a few short years. Falkia's ability to act diplomatically when the occasion called for it had begun to diminish proportionately. To refuse the will of the Schwarzwolf was to invite ruin. She even married the son of the chieftain of the Bloody Hands, and bore him 2 daughters, heirs to the throne of the Schwarzwolf. Yet, the 2 lovers could never share power together, and in one ruthless act, Falkia also slew her own husband in cold blood during a ritual ceremony. Lucifax, the Demon Prince. You could concede defeat to me now, girl. Admit that I am your better, and take your place at my side. Your days will be filled with all you desire, and your nights will be spent in pleasurable ecstasy. I am offering you so much more than the snows of the north and the ingratitude of these barbarous people. If you come with me now, you will be a true queen. From Lucifax, a demon prince of Slaanesh. When a servant of Slaanesh, a demon prince known as Lucifax, came into Falkia's hall, and, smitten by her feral beauty, commanded that she abandon the life of a monarch to service his depraved needs as a harem girl, the proud warrior queen truly flew into the berserker rage and demanded a duel between her and the demon prince. Thinking that the demon could easily best a woman in battle, Lucifax gladly agreed and staged the battle on the morrow. At dusk, Falkia fought the demon prince without the need for even armor, and for a day and night the 2 fought hard. In the raging maelstrom of sparks and blades, Falkia slowly succumbed herself into an inner rage which saw her through the fight. With a mighty thrust, Falkia struck off the demon prince's very head with her barbed spear. Victorious, Falkia affixed the severed but still whispering head of the demon to her shield, and swore before her tribe that she would carry it to the Chaos Wastes and place it at the very foot of Khorne's throne. Such a boast should not have been taken lightly. But everyone in the tribe knew that their queen would go to any length to earn the favor of her newfound god. Demonhood. Khorne, Karnath, it matters little what you call the blood god. The truth remains that the followers of Slaanesh will be waiting for you, Gore Queen. You will cross the ice, you will enter the wastes, and there your people will be slaughtered. One after the other they will fall, their blood will stain the snows crimson, and then, when only you remain, then I will claim you. From Lucifax. As she traveled north, the demons of Slaanesh dwelling within the wastes fell upon Falkia, eager to avenge the insult she had made to their master. Though Falkia was a fierce warrior of Norsca, not even she could stand long against such a horde of abominations. Though she and her followers fought valiantly, the queen was eventually torn to pieces by the demons. In spite of her failure, her valor and courage had pleased Khorne, and so the blood god saw fit to intervene. The sagas of the Norse say that Khorne's roars shook the very foundations of the earth, that his bellows made the mountains themselves tremble and woke Falkia from death. Khorne then took Falkia in his burning grasp and twisted her into a more pleasing form, forging her anew in the fires of his wrath. He bent back great horns from her skull, gave her the long bestial legs of a bloodletter, and pulled back great bloody wings from the flesh and muscle of her shapely back. Reborn as a mighty demon queen, Khorne set upon her a new task. She would now descend every dawn onto the battlefields of the mortal realms, and fight alongside those worthy warriors of Norsca and beyond who served Khorne, and from the ranks of their dead she would bear warriors who died in glorious battle to the halls of Khorne, where they would fight on the blood god's legions for all eternity. Thus, the Gore Queen, the Shield Maiden of Khorne, was born. This ascension was prophesied in the oral traditions of some tribes of Norsca, having spoken of great, winged demons with mighty spears bearing warriors to the realm of chaos. On her return to the north, Falkia was met by some such tribesmen who had invariably fallen to their knees in adoration of her before she had even spoken a word. To cut all ties to her former humanity, Falkia led her followers south towards the lands of her former tribe. There, she mercilessly killed all of her former people, butchering them to the last and feasting upon their flesh. In the climax of that battle, Falkia came to blows with her only living daughter, who resembled every bit of her mother when she was still a mere mortal. But the fate of the battle was never far from doubt, and with a single, swift thrust of her clawed hand, she ripped her heart out, the young woman gurgling blood as she gave her last dying breath to protect her people. Last to die by Falkia's hands was her own half-brother, the last of her family line. Long ago, her younger brother once looked up to her, But when he stood before Falkia this one last time, he knew that death was coming, and he was at peace. Giving out one outstretched hand to the sister he once knew, Falkia ruthlessly ripped his head out of his body, and with her prize seized, she allowed her berserker army to kill all the men, women, and children that remained. Thus had she finally severed all ties to her mortal life, and fully embraced herself as an instrument of her god's dark will. The Blood Raven. You swore to me that you would not fall behind, and I do not yet consider your oath fulfilled. Khorne calls to your blood, and must be answered in kind. Rise now, and revel in the roar of battle once again. From Falkia. Though she was already honored and famed in the violent societies of the Norse, it was in the year of 1396 IC that the civilized races would first encounter Falkia the Bloody. In that year, in the icy wastes of Norska, a warband of Norskans waged war against the northern dwarf hold of Karak Gulg, led by their king, a chaos champion known as Botvar. Falkia descended from the high realm of chaos to bless Botvar's efforts, a good omen for any Norseman. She had also come with a commandment from Khorne that Botvar's warriors must perform a rite known as the Blood Raven upon the defeated dwarfs. Falkia joined Botvar in leading the warband and overran the dwarven positions surrounding Karak Gulg before they overran the citadel itself. She then led the Norsemen in the practice of the Blood Raven, unfolding the bloody ribs of the dwarfs, making naked their hearts, and spreading out their lungs upon their shoulders, making it seem as if the tortured dwarfs bore bloody wings upon their backs. Thus, the battle was won, and this torture forever became an important practice amongst the vicious tribes of Norska. In this way, Falkia had again impacted her people's culture greatly. Amongst some tribes of Norska, this act was also termed as the Blood Eagle. The Burning of Nordland. I am the Blood Queen. I am the bringer of glory. I am the avatar of my beloved on the field of battle, and I am here for the prize of your skulls. I am vengeance, and I am death. Fear my presence. I strike terror into the darkest recesses of your treacherous hearts, and drive you from me like vermin. Fear me. From Falkia. This was not the last the civilized races would see of Falkia. In 2398 IC, she came once more to the Norse tribes and bade them to follow her to war. Thus, the Northmen took to their longships and sailed south with Falkia at their head to Nordland. Under her leadership, the Norskans fell upon the towns and villages of the northern province and slaughtered all who dwelled therein. No foes could withstand the berserk warriors, as they made all they surveyed into a bloody sacrifice for their war god. The nobility in Zalzenmund sent no aid to the beleaguered towns, Whether out of fear or a genuine inability is a matter of some debate. Regardless, in the end, it was left to the common folk of Nordland to defend themselves. Led by a simple fisherman known as Harald Dreidsacker, the fishermen of Nordland beat their boothooks into halberds and patrol the coastlines and man the abandoned coastal forts of Nordland, ever watchful for any signs of Norse raiders. A small fleet of boats was organized by Harald to be ready to respond to the sights of the Gore Queen's red sails upon the horizon. As a cold Geheimnistag wind blew, the people of Nordland made a collective sigh of relief. For the close of the summer heralded the end of the Chaos Marauders raiding season. However, their relief proved to be short-lived, for only 3 days later the Norskans fell upon Dietershafen, causing great slaughter and havoc there. Harald and his fleet sailed to intercept the longships of the Marauders, but the bloody Queen of the Norse threw her great spear with such force that it smashed Harald's vessel to matchwood and sent the fishermen tumbling into the waters. All was thought lost, and it seemed as if the town of Dietershafen would be destroyed. However, at that fateful moment, the town was saved by the appearance of a dwarven vessel, steel-clad and belching smoke, no doubt drawn by the chance to avenge Falkia's desolation of the Norse dwarf hall of Karak-Gulg. The great steel-clad ship was more than a match for the wooden longships of the Norskans, and it tore through their comparatively fragile fleet. As a result, the raiders were forced to retreat back to Norska. But none could say what became of Falkia herself, though as Khorne's shield maiden, it was clear her existence continued. In the aftermath of the battle, it was found that Harald Dreidsacker had survived. He was found frozen on a nearby shore, barely clinging to life. Nursed back to health and hailed hero of Nordland for standing tall and unwavering against a terrible foe, for without Dreidsacker, Nordland's people surely would have fallen to the bloody axes of the Norse. Yet the damage was done, and the ruin brought to the townships and the plundering of much of the province's food and fuel supplies meant that only the hardiest of men lived past the winter of 2398 IC. A few months later, tragically, Harald Dreidsacker was killed en route to Zulsenmund, capital of Nordland province. Some say by the spies of the vengeful Norsemen, others by the hand of the nobility he had shamed with his bravery against the Norse and their demonic queen. Ultimately, it did not matter, for the Norsemen had triumphed regardless, having slain mightily in the name of their god and having spilled rivers of blood for his glory. For Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows for all eternity without cease. And now, the last chapter of her story, called The Bringer of Glory. It takes strength of purpose to do this, but keep your loyalty true, and my lord's hand will guide you correctly. From Falkia the Bloody. According to Norskan sagas, Falkia has only been matched in battle once, when the famed champion, Lord Mortkin, journeyed into the Chaos Wastes to earn the favor of the gods. To receive the favor of Khorne, Mortkin bested a massive, two-headed giant in a direct contest of strength. Impressed, Khorne sent Falkia to further test the great champion. The Black Iron Reaver fought the Gore Queen to a standstill, matching her every spear stroke with a sweep from his mighty axe, thus earning the grudging respect of Khorne's Shield Maiden. With that, the Lord of Battles blessed Mortkin with his boon of unmatched strength. Indeed, Falkia is sent as many times to test the worthy as she is to fight alongside them and lead them on to Khorne's brazen halls. When she emerges onto the battlefield, the warriors of chaos fight on with even greater vigor in her presence, eager for the chance to become Khorne's chosen. However, should they falter, Khorne's wrath shall descend upon them through Falkia, and they shall be cursed, never to know the glory of Khorne after their deaths. Indeed, Falkia herself shall mete out their punishment, laying it out with lethal strikes from Sleipnir. When Archaon, anointed of chaos, was still upon his quest to become the Ever-Chosen, it is said that Falkia came to his aid in a battle against the Dark Elves. When Archaon tore out the heart of a Dark Elf assailant and held it before a war shrine dedicated to Khorne, he had pleased the war-wont god, who saw fit to send forth deliverance to the favored one. Lightning bolts red as blood rent the sky, heralding the arrival of the bringer of glory. Howling bloody songs of war, she charged towards the black dragon at the head of the opposing army. Moving with the fury of the wind, Falkia lopped off the head of the dark elf sorceress astride the beast with one fell blow. Bereft of its rider, the dragon flew into an uncontrolled rage, but its petty anger was little compared to the berserker's rage that burned within Falkia's veins. Her spear tore great gashes in the dragon's hide, and with her final stroke, she tore apart the creature's throat and sent it crashing to the ground. Howling again a cry of victory, she plunged into the enemies below, slaying all within her reach. With her weakening the enemy line, Archaon led his warriors in a devastating charge that scattered the elves. When victory was achieved, Falkia vanished from the battlefield as quickly as she had come. Falkia's war gear. First, Sleipnir. The Gore Queen's spear was forged for her in her former life by a great blacksmith of Norska, named for a terrible demon of Norscan myths. The barbed spear of Falkia has slain kings and paupers alike, ripping out their hearts or striking their heads from their body with single, mighty blows. The weapon bears the blessings of Khorne and can tear through the mightiest armor and toughest hide with ease. Then, the Scarlet Armor. The mail of Falkia is eternally drenched with blood. It has been blessed with the power to sap the strength from those who face the Battle Maiden in melee combat. And the Demon Shield. Falkia still bears the horned head of Lucifax upon her shield. The demon's black eyes beguile those who seek to strike her, causing them to become distracted in battle, and causing their resolve to weaken. Next, the former chieftain of one of the most bloodthirsty and brutal tribes in all of Norsca. See you soon. Ulf Demonkin, formerly known as Ulf in his days of mortality, is a mighty demon prince of Khorne and former chieftain of the bloodthirsty Sneggar tribe of southern Norsca. The Sneggar are a tribe of merciless warriors dedicated solely to the worship of Khorne and to rank high in his brutal favor. Ulf was originally one of the chieftains of the Sneggar, and his fury, strength, and devotion to Khorne saw his elevation to demonhood. With his apotheosis, his fellow tribesmen took to worshipping him as a demon deity of chaos in his own right. The night he ascended, having been adopted as his summoning day, where the Sneggar summoned their ancient chieftain that he might impart the mighty blessings of Khorne upon their strongest warriors before they take to the south to offer up a bloody tithe to their god Khorne. This day is known as the Moon Time of Ulf. Where once Ulf's mane and beard were golden and plated, now they are burning flame. Where once his flesh was pale like the rest of his skin, now his skin has turned black as coal, and his teeth have been changed into iron tusks. Such a terrifying mien is fitting for a mighty demonic god, particularly one who draws his existence from Khorne. Ulf's manifestation has been drawn from the dreams and legends his tribesmen have created for him since his ascension. For the realm of chaos is also the realm of dreams, and thus the material form of his immortal spirit is derived from the thoughts of his followers. Ulf Demonkin, as a demon prince, possesses the power to bestow the blessings of his god Khorne upon those of his choosing. His boon is a fairly extensive mutation, which transforms the recipient into a quasi-demonic creature, similar in appearance to Ulf's own behemoth stature. The boon also bestows highly enhanced strength, as is common to many of Khorne's unholy rewards. The current chieftain of the Sneggar is known as Gridal, Scourge of the South, who is one of Ulf's many descendants. Next, a mighty demonic servant of Khorne, known as the Slayer of Kings and the Skull Taker. See you soon. The Skull Taker's claws crunched against the bony shale as he descended from the high ground. There was no hesitancy in his march, no doubt or question, only the grim resolve of a man who had long ago accepted his fate. No gods, the Skull Taker's grinding voice spoke, No witches, just warriors. He paused in his descent, lifting his wailing sword in a somber salute. Just warriors and steel. From the demonic Skull Taker, facing the last living Zavag warrior. Uzul the Skull Taker, also known as Khorne's Champion, the Blooded Wanderer, and the Slayer of Kings, is a mighty, demonic servant of Khorne. Some claim he is the greatest of his chosen bloodletters, while others say he was once a mortal human named Vrakas that became a powerful demon prince. In ancient times, Vrakas was a mighty Kurgan warlord and Tsar of the Dolgan tribe. Forging disparate warbands into a mighty army, he led them into battle against the forces of the Tong-Zavag Empire. 100 warlords fell to the Dolgan's axe, but with each victory the warriors of the defeated chieftains swore fealty to Vrakas, and his army swelled. Vrakas then led his army into the Tong's homeland and slaughtered all in his path. It was during the last and greatest battle that he finally met a worthy foe, for Teog-Te Kagan was the mightiest Tong warlord to have ever lived. Wielding the demon sword Blood Eater, the Kagan was able to best Vrakas with his superior weapon. The Kurgan warlord was captured and spitted atop a spike, and days went by as his body was slowly and painfully impaled. Whilst any other warrior would have begged for death, Vrakas was consumed by hatred. The Kagan had denied him a warrior's death, and so, with great strength, he pulled himself from the spike and crawled across the waste, his entrails following behind. He soon came across a great forge. It was here that Teog-Te had forged the mighty demon sword that he had used to best the Kurgan Tsar. As the dying Vrakas approached, a voice called out to him from the forge itself. A mighty bloodthirsty soul had been enslaved to power the forge. Defeated and destroyed long ago by Kagan, the demon had guided Vrakas to him as an instrument of vengeance. He empowered the dying Kurgan with the forge's might, gifting him near impenetrable chaos armor, monstrous strength, regeneration, and a sword as black as midnight. Thus, Vrakas was reborn as the Skull Taker. Over the coming years, the name of the Skull Taker was made legend. A tireless chaos champion of Khorne who challenged and slew any warlord he encountered, offering their skulls to the blood god. Tales abounded of how he had killed the chaos dragon Shanith and placed its bleeding heads at the foot of the Skull Throne. How he rode against the ogres of the Marrow Chewer, and alone scoured them from the land. How he dared face the sin stealer of the decadent Ulvags, and vanquished the demon from the realm of mortals for 1,000 years. How he visited destruction upon the blasphemous city of Po, and left not one of Lashore's children alive within its accursed walls. Eventually, the Skull Taker ventured into the lands of the Tong and their subjugated allies. None could stand against him, not the craftiest Hung, the strongest Kurgan, or the most monstrous Gore. All who did battle with him were cut down, their bodies left heaped in great carrion mounds. No tribe or nation had been able to defy the armies of Teog-Te, but the Skull Taker cut a path through them as though they were feeble children. This devastation continued until the great Teog-Te himself rode forth to personally deal with this threat. Facing the Kurgan in his mighty kingdom, the Skull Taker became engaged in a duel of epic proportions. The two champions clashed with demon blades and fought for days. Eventually, the Skull Taker was able to mortally wound his enemy, but not before Teog-Te drove Blood Eater into his stomach. Vengeance should have been fulfilled, and the Skull Taker should have died that day. But he could only be banished, not destroyed. Such was Khorne's blessing upon the vengeful warrior. Indeed, the Skull Taker would return centuries later to destroy the Zavag's homeland, slaughtering each of Teog-Te's successors. He offered their skulls to his ancient forge and thus destroyed their entire realm, drawing it into the lands of Khorne and erasing it from existence in the mortal world. The Skull Taker was rewarded for this with ascension to demonhood, taking on a form resembling a mighty bloodletter and wearing a cloak of skulls. The man, once known as Vrkas, had become one of Khorne's mightiest followers. Demonhood. When not campaigning with his master's armies, Skull Taker roams the realm of chaos atop his mighty juggernaut, Kul Tiran. He appears before fortress and stronghold, bellowing challenge after challenge to the greatest warriors within until one of their number is foolish enough to meet him in single combat. When a foe emerges, Skull Taker dismounts from his loyal steed, salutes the enemy with upturned blade, and charges forward to claim another skull in the Blood God's name. Such duels are brief and bloody, for Skull Taker is swifter than the last beat of a shattered heart, and knows every weakness of every enemy. He does not slay his foes outright, but shatters their limbs, leaving them helpless. His clawed grasp settles upon his fallen opponent's head. Magical fire gouts from his fingertips, searing away skin and sinew until pale bone is laid bare for all to see. With a single perfect twist, born of long practice, Skull Taker breaks the naked skull free of its spine and tosses it into a coarse, woven sack filled with trophies from previous victims. He then bellows his challenges at the fortress once more, striking down any further champions that emerge until no other present themselves or boredom sets in. Mounting Kul Tiran once more, Skull Taker departs in search of fresh foes. Uzul is just as feared in the mortal realms as he is in the courts of the Dark Gods. He is drawn by tales of martial prowess and rumor of mighty combatants who might offer some small challenge. History is littered with accounts of his appearance before the gates of Bretonnian castles, ogre feast halls, elf mansions, Nehekaran necropolises, and dwarf halls, each time demanding that an accomplished warrior be sent forth to face him. Such encounters never end well for mortals. Indeed, in all the legends surrounding the Skull Taker, there is but one account that tells of anything other than his victory. In the legends of the Empire, he battles Sigmar in the World's Edge Mountains for 3 days without pause, but ultimately earns naught for his defeat. He still bears the scar he earned that day, and he takes great pleasure in repaying the debt on Sigmar's inheritors at every opportunity. Demons have long memories and little desire to grant forgiveness. Over the millennia, the Skull Taker's collection of trophies has become so massive as to be beyond counting. Whilst Uzul collects skulls from all his victims, it is only those of mighty individuals he truly cherishes, for with the taking of the skull, he inherits a portion of the enemy's strength. He hooks his most prized skulls, mementos of closed fort and satisfactory battle all, onto his cloak. All others he sets up on the parapet of Khorne's brass citadel to watch the approaches to the Blood God's lair. So it is that a demon that began existence as a bloodletter has become something to command the respect of the Dark Gods themselves. It is known that in 1001 IC, he began the so-called Skull Harvest, descending upon the mortal plane to claim the skulls of all the Northlanders who worshipped any god other than Khorne. His war gear. First, the Cloak of Skulls, forged from the claimed crania of favored victims and heavy with dark enchantments. The Cloak of Skulls offers formidable protection against the enemy's blows and spells. It is made of heavy leather. And the Slayer Sword, crafted from a single shard of Khorne's boundless wrath. This blade blazes with unholy energy and has an uncanny ability to find the foe's weak spot. This was the last of the most noteworthy of Khorne's servants. Next will be the ultimate recut, and after that, the Champions of Khorne. See you soon.